That's the nudity.
Yeah.
I like this guy,
Bailey's in
Tony.
form. All right.
Would you like to be part of the cool scene? Would you like to hang out with the in crowd? Impress friends with your knowledge of all the new groovy bands and solo artists? Well, you've tuned your dial to the right frequency. This is the BBC. That's right, it's Bailey, Braggy, and Girl, unfiltered and undiscovered. Over to you, Curly.
And welcome to this week's episode of the Unfiltered and Undiscovered podcast. And in a week where Queensland is certainly sitting on the fence about either joining the East Coast in lockdown or hosting the NRL Grand Final, and the week that the Melbourne Demons are still celebrating their first AFL flag in 57 years, we're really pleased to bring you another brilliant show. It's going to be a lot of fun tonight. So firstly, from Melbourne, where the best hot chocolate is coming from the Jolly Miller Cafe in Melton, please welcome Bailey.
Mate, that's where I live. That's my suburb. He's done his research.
And from Adelaide, where great hot chocolate can be found at Cocoa Black in Rundle Mall, please welcome Braggy or Tave Bragg. And I got it right this week.
Hey, well done,
not
Curly. You're on the ball today,
Mark
mate.
Bragg's not here
Mixed me up with my brother.
The brother's not here. Gentlemen, what a great show we had last week. We had Blind Season from Detroit, and I'm still so appreciative that Shane joined us in the early hours of last Thursday morning.
He must have been keen.
And we've got another brilliant guest this week. We've got James Dawson joining us tonight from the Launchsquad. So how are you, James? And welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm feeling very good, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get into our chat, we've got a couple of little bits of news that we've got to share. Firstly, the Ritzy kids, they've had a great week. They
have.
They entered the top 20 radio downloads with their first single called Breakthrough. And that's just an amazing milestone to Sean and Mitch, and they're friends of the podcast. And I think it was episode 20 and then 29. We've had Sean from the Ritzy kids on. So
Curly, was Sean was our first guest, wasn't he?
It's obviously because of us, Curly.
Maybe we played a little part in it. And Sean was our first guest.
He was. I was trying to think the other day who was our first guest and what's led us to what we have now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But how exciting is that? Top 20 independent
awesome.
band. They're self-managed, doing everything right. So well done to the Ritzy kids. And also we've got a live audience tonight, gentlemen. And we have the ability to have people dial in.
Cool.
And
Awesome.
I've got one already. Let's see who we've got here, hey?
This is interesting.
Here. Just a quick call for Braggy with a massive congratulations on his latest song. I ain't got much to say these days. Maybe like Twitter. Braggy, it's tremendous. It's great. It's the best. It made me the winner in the Groove Stakes.
That is awesome.
We really are sort of hitting the milestones now where Trumpy calls in. But I've got another one here too. So, as I said, first time with an audience, first time with dial-ins. Let's see who this is, shall we?
Oh, my buddy.
Hey, Bailey. It's Ed here. Just wanted to say, I've heard the 4 a.m. remix, and man, it's good. Like that earthquake in Melbourne, it got the walls shaking. Great song, and can't wait to hear the EP. Stay focused and work hard. See you soon, Matty.
All right.
Thanks, Ed, mate.
Mate.
We'll see you soon, bud.
Mate, we really are hitting the heights, aren't we? We had Trumpy and we had Ed, so well done. James, welcome to the show. This is what you get when you come on the Unfiltered and Undiscovered podcast.
Awesome. We don't know what happens.
Tell us a little bit, James. You've been in music now for a lifetime, so share a little bit about your musical background.
Yeah, right. So I started playing guitar when I was 12 when I was in year 7 of high school. And music for me was pretty much a way for me to feel kind of a part of something bigger than myself. So I wasn't really an academic kind of a kid, and I wasn't really a sporty kind of a kid. So music was the thing that I lent into, and pretty much throughout my formative teenage years, I was a guitarist, and went on to manage my own band, own original band in the early noughties. And pretty much from there, that gave me the inspiration to start, I guess, working as a booking agent in 2002, 2003, around about then. And some interesting experiences in that 3-year period, but that basically formed the genesis of what the Launchsquad was going to be in 2006. And pretty much since 2006, it's been a ride. I've worked with a lot of big names and a lot of nice big venues as well, and it's the last 18 months have been a challenge, but overall it's been one of the most rewarding kind of experiences being in the music industry that I've had to date. Yeah,
excellent.
Outside of having children, of course, can't forget them.
Of course, yeah, of course. James, tell us a little bit about your band. So, because you did a couple of support gigs and with the band that your original band.
Yeah, LUKSTAT. So that was that's going back a while now. It's that was kind of, I guess, my first and last foray into I guess original music, and it was something that I was really passionate about, and something that I really pushed pretty hard back when I was in my early 20s, and it was just through sheer determination and perseverance that we kind of started to make some kind of impact, I guess, with those bands that we wanted to kind of be on bills with and be on stage with and kind of impress. That was dogged determination that kind of saw us through on that one. So yeah.
Who did you play with, James? Who was on some of those bills?
Yeah, well, the biggest act we played with was Greenspoon.
That's awesome.
That was pretty cool. I mean, it was
Thrills and Sunday Kills.
it was the album before that. It was the Lost Control album. Which I think the big track off that was Chemical Heart. So they'll kind of, they kind of busted out of that, you might call it post-grunge kind of era, the late 90s, and kind of started to kind of get more of a mainstream audience. So we played some big venues with those guys, and it was just an experience just to see how that side of things kind of clicked and how that worked, and just the amount of, I guess, work and I guess pre-work as well. So like, if you're playing a date in July, the tour is getting booked in January, February, and it's being marketed and pushed for 3 months before the date. So it just kind of opened my eyes into, I guess, some of the reality of, putting on a big show of that magnitude.
Yeah. And so now you're a promoter, obviously. It's called the Launchsquad, your company or business.
Yep.
Can you tell us, give us a job description? What does a promoter do?
So I'm a promoter / venue consultant. So initially I would probably say I'm more of a venue consultant than a promoter, but because in the music industry, as you guys probably know, you have to be kind of multifaceted with lots of things that you need to be able to be across so that you can earn a living and make an income. But I guess promoter is someone who would pretty much just take all of the risk, all of the financial risk in putting on a show, and it can range from something as little as a 100 capacity kind of small venue in an inner city suburb, or it can be something larger. I mean, some of the large promoters like Andrew McManus, Chuggy, and Ted Daney. I mean, they're doing all the big guys. So there's actually a really cool book if you're interested, by a chap by the name of Stuart Coop, who wrote a book called The Promoters. And he talks about, he tells his story, and I can't remember who the promoter was, but he interviewed, I think it was Andrew McManus, and he was talking about touring the Red Hot Chili Peppers back in, it must have been the early noughties, late 90s, something like that. And they're in this massive stadium. And Stuart asked him, he said, so, what's the profit margin on this? And he said, you see those seats right up the top, that last row right up top? He goes, when those seats are sold, that's when I'll start making a profit.
Wow.
So it's very, very cut and dry. And when you think about like these artist requests, with drink riders and all that kind of stuff that they need, the flights and all that kind of stuff, it would be very cut and dry on actually being able to turn a reasonably decent profit.
Yeah.
Especially when musicians are princesses. So
yeah, but I guess you being a musician, you've had that experience because you're the guy in between the venue and the muso. So you have to understand the muso. You have to understand the venue as well, I guess. So that's got to be tricky.
Musicians are princesses.
Yeah.
Musicians are, but they just. It's something that I get to tap into the creativeness of musicians, and really the way I see it is kind of almost being a voice and a champion for musicians, and being able to make sure that kind of treading the line in between venue and musician, making sure that the musicians aren't getting a raw deal, but also making sure that the venues aren't getting a raw deal, because I've seen both things happen where an artist might come in and drastically overcharge because the venue is ignorant. But more often than not, it happens the other way, where because there's a lot more musicians than there are venues, you find that it starts driving the musician fee and the musician price downwards. So I kind of see my role as being a champion for musicians and making sure that we can maintain some kind of base rate or fair deal.
Yeah. So James, I'm just going to go back a little bit because I find your progression through the industry to be really enlightening. What was the name of your band again? How do you say it?
Yes, so it's LUKSTAT. So if you LUKSTAT, and it's a tragic story. I remember watching Interview with the Vampire with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, and we're trying to think of a band name. And Tom Cruise's character in the movie is Lestat, Lestat. But I had a brain fart, and I messaged the bass player. I said, I found the band name. It's LUKSTAT. And he goes, what the fuck is that? And I said, it's this dude. It's the name of this character in the movie. And I've watched the credits and realized that it wasn't. But I thought, nah, stuff it. It's unique. No one else is going to think of it. So it's stuck.
Absolutely. When you read it, it sounds like something you're going to buy from IKEA. So
probably there might be something out there.
Yeah. So what I uncovered, Tave and Bailey, during our research for tonight, I uncovered this clip from 2008 of this particular band called LUKSTAT. So
here we go.
Here we go. Are you ready to see James on stage? So,
Yes. Is he naked?
I think there'll be an eyebrow ring.
Nudity.
Second gestures, but we're of no use. Fuck it! My door swings open, I didn't awake. All the dreams that I lost are all lost in disgrace. It's the sound that goes on forever. It's the sound that never stays. All the truths that you wanted to tell me have gone since I could have stayed. It's the sound that goes on forever. It's the sound that never stays. All the truths that you wanted to tell me have gone since I could have stayed.
that some memories there, James?
Oh, it's youth at its finest.
I can see why you play with Greenspoon.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pure gold.
I thought you two would appreciate that. That was that's first time I heard that song this afternoon. I thought that's got some kick to it. That's really good.
Aussie.
Funnily enough, that was
When Aussies do it, it's got that. I don't know. It's just you can tell it's Australian. It doesn't matter what genre of music, whether it's just straight out rock or whatever, or even that grunge. It's got that. I don't know. It just smells of the beer on the carpet,
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that was recorded. The visual there was recorded at the infamous Hopeton Hotel in Sydney.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
I've heard that venue. I've
And
never been there, but...
fun fact: the front of house audio engineer on the night that we shot it was a chap by the name of Simon Melly, who you've probably come across from. I think he was on The Voice or X Factor or one of those guys. A magnificent singer and a genuine, lovely human being.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So James, now that we've got that out of the way and a cracker of a song, just quietly, tell us about the industry now. What's happening out there? Obviously, COVID's created this real pain. So what are you seeing?
Oh wow, what a question! COVID's tipped everything upside down, completely everything upside down. If we'd had this conversation 4 months ago, because I'm in Sydney before the lockdowns that we've had since July, I would have said that the biggest concern or the biggest hurdle thus far with moving forward is the uncertainty and there being no roadmap, no path, not knowing. So if you're putting on a show, you don't know if the show's going to go forward just with numerous different factors, whether you can fit the amount of people that you need in with COVID capacities, whether there's going to be an outbreak and they're going to shut everything down, and then even on top of all that, sitting nicely on top is the fact, well, with all these things and there being a lack of confidence from punters, are they actually going to spend money and buy a ticket, which is the first thing that you normally have outside of a pandemic, but that's down the list.
That's it. Like I bought a ticket last year to see a band, and they just kept postponing. I know it's not their fault because I'm in Melbourne, James. I don't know if you knew that. So lockdown central, and then I just get to the point where I'm like, I'm just going to get a refund because I don't want to disappoint myself. But they end up cancelling the tour anyway because exactly what you said.
Yeah, it's from my level. I think about the bigger guys who have organised airfares, they've organised ground staff, they've organised everything and paid for most of it. Like the biggest one was Byron Bay Blues Fest.
Oh yeah, of
They
course.
talked about losing $12 million, and that's the money they lost. And they were more concerned about the vendors and the suppliers who were providing all the the services when you actually walked into the festival. So it's
such a good show. It's such a shame that that's had to happen to them. But they still seem so positive. I got a list out for this year, or next year. They're not giving up, are they?
Yeah, and I think that's part of being a creative as well, like being in that industry. It's just like you're always looking forward to, as in a plan wise and looking forward, but you're always looking forward to going, okay, well, what are we going to do next? Because you want to do these things, but also your livelihood and your, depends on it. You need to make it work.
So James, some of the people in your stable, you got a big range. You got original acts, cover acts, solo. What have you got? Can you tell us about that?
It's interesting because most of the acts I work with, I have met through, I guess, being covers artists.
Yeah.
But I would say at least 60% of them have their own original careers in various formats and various
Yeah.
kind of incarnations. And I mean, over the years, I've worked with like Glenn Esmond from the Butterfly Effect, who's the bass player in the Butterfly Effect. I've worked with Tim, who is in Boy and Bear.
Okay.
I've worked with Damien Leith. I've worked with Lior. I've worked with Wes Carr.
Wes.
So, and
He's cool.
yeah, and worked with all these people before they actually kind of went off and I guess cracked. Well, except for Glenn, but they worked with them all before they kind of broke. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's kind of tagging back into what I was talking about before, being the kind of intermediary between musicians and venues. I also see my role as kind of providing real life kind of income possibilities for artists whilst they focus on.
Yeah, everyone has
passion
to,
projects.
nearly everyone, 99% of muso start.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to get
You need to do that.
so it's good that you look after them as well.
Yeah, and it's very much a loyalty based kind of system as well, where you know they understand where I sit as a provider of gigs, and they will always kind of be as loyal as they can. But if a decent opportunity comes up for them, in their original career, I'm more than happy for them to take it, because at the end of the day, it's about creating more opportunities for musicians to actually get out there and earn a living from doing what they love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I noticed on your website you got a few tribute bands
Yes.
on there. It's a big thing, isn't it? Is it big everywhere else around the world, I wonder, or is it just in Australia because we're a little bit remote and we don't get, the bigger acts down here? So
yeah, I think if we compare it to, say, the States, like I know for a fact that tribute bands in the States is huge. Like,
Yeah, wow.
So I'm currently in a Guns N' Roses tribute band, and I kind of look at what other bands around the world are doing, Guns N' Roses tributes around the world, and there's Guns N' Roses tributes in America that easily play to 3,500-4,000 people. It's ridiculous. It's insane. So I think it's something that kind of started happening here probably about 10 years ago, and it really started to solidify. And I think a lot of things kind of happened at the one time where in New South Wales and Sydney in particular, there was this license called the Place of Public Entertainment license that venues had to have in order to have live music at the venue in any facet, any format. And they kind of abolished that. And at the same time, they made it easier for small venues, cafes and bars to, have a liquor license. So these kind of two things happened at the same time. But with that, there came an influx of, smaller venues doing smaller kind of music.
Yeah.
So people weren't going to the one big venues anymore. So they're going to a lot of different places, a lot of smaller places. So there weren't as many people out. So what venues found is that they weren't earning as much money, or they couldn't justify spending as much money on entertainment. So what happened is the party bands were big in Sydney. So the 5, 6, 7-piece party bands were big. But then what happened, there was this kind of mesh of, merging of, party bands are kind of not as viable anymore because you can have Johnny Blogg's party band who plays the best of everything. And you're kind of throwing a wide net out there and not knowing who you're going to get. But with tribute bands, what you have access to is you have a very niche, very defined market. And if you have the right tribute band for the right venue, it can actually be a better yield for you on the night as a venue putting some of these bands on, because you can get more people in, and they're going to drink more, and they're going to spend more. They're going to have dinner, and they're going to go slap the pokies. And...
I was very on the fence about tribute bands, but a mate sent me something the other day. There's a Blink-182 tribute band, the Crowbar in Sydney, coming up in the next few months, and that would be something I'd love to go to.
Yeah, I mean, I remember looking at them a couple of months ago, and I thought, okay, the drummer's got to be on point. He's got to be on point. He's got to be.
He's got to be like,
and he is.
Parker. He's got to be fucking mint.
Yeah, and he's a good drummer. And the good thing with those guys is that they're all young dudes as well.
Catastrophe. That's them. Yeah.
I'm not sure. I know there's I think, is it the Australian Blink-182 shows that these are those?
Yeah,
guys?
they're doing the Mark, Tom and Travis show. Punk and Emo Night at Crowbar. fucking what day? Up 30th of October. Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of tribute bands are old farts like us, you know. We kind of
But
go,
I guess-
we want to hear our stuff played
Oh,
again.
they called Link 182, and then you got
Link
Jimmy,
182.
and then you got Jimmy Eat World covered by Kang, and then Idle Threat and Remingtons. Yeah.
But I
That's
mean,
cool.
it's obviously, if you think about it, and we know from over the last couple of weeks, that we're losing these old guys every week, and so you can't see these bands anymore. A lot of them, you know. So it's a market for sure. And I'm guessing you said, the drummers have to be on point for Blink 182. Your singer's going to have to be on point for Guns N' Roses.
Yes.
Yeah, singer doesn't have to be on point for Blink 182.
No.
That's for sure.
No, it's we've gone through a couple of singers because it's so demanding. It is like one of the most demanding kind of vocal roles. Like his range is just insane. So it's a hard ask, but
it's a hard act to follow.
Yeah. Well, I'll bring it back Greenspoon into the conversation again.
You picked up on that one.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I'm all over it.
Hi, Bailey.
Mate.
So James, what sort of so in today's world, in the musical world, how big is social media for bands and their own marketing and getting booked into gigs and whatnot?
Great. Yeah, well, it's hard to not talk about the impact of social media without talking about the impact of the internet and the impact of Napster and the impact of Spotify.
Yeah,
Napster. That's going back a while.
Yeah. Well, that's where it all started, right? You know, file sharing started back with Napster,
and then LimeWire.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all got the viruses on the computer for that, haven't we?
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, social media for bands is everything. It is
everything. I mean, you can there's some bands out there.
We just don't have websites because there's no point. And the way that we kind of, I guess, consume music these days, it's very much we want to engage. As a musician, you want to engage with your audience, and as an audience member, you want to engage with the band, and you want to have that real kind of connection with the other. So social media gives a lot of bands access to that. So yeah, I mean, with social media and Spotify, it's this whole way of just digesting music differently, and it's the social media is everything. It is everything.
Off the top of your head, can you think of anything that artists shouldn't do promoting themselves?
Social commentary.
Nudity is probably one, Bailey.
I would say social commentary. I'd say keep your opinions to yourself, unless you are one of those bands, say like a Rage Against the Machine, who's just like, no, this is what we think.
Or anti.
You can all get stuff. Yeah.
As in like politics, as in keep to yourself sort of thing.
Yeah, because you never know who is going to what side of the political spectrum or the social spectrum that your audience is kind of coming from. I mean, you might come out with a Black Lives Matter kind of sentiment, and you may have upset, maybe, I would argue stupidly, you may have upset a whole bunch of people.
Absolutely,
because they don't believe in the Black Lives Matter. So it's one of those things. Just like if you think about something, post it on your own personal page and keep it, keep the band kind of pristine.
Yeah, it's a big one because a lot of the musicians I follow in America, it's very clear who they voted for.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah,
and it is an interesting. I interviewed on one of my other podcasts a lady in the States who's the Happiness Ninja, and her accounts get taken down. Get banned, 30-day bans, because she's very much on the conspiracy side of, well, just about everything. And so how can you run a business, or how can you create a brand when you're not even visible half the time? So that's probably a really good point, James. So
very good point.
Yeah.
Going back to the online thing, James, I know Curly has got this thing that he's live from the couch. Have you ever got into any like online live concerts?
Yeah. So let me get my dates right. So last lockdown, April, May, June in Sydney, we tried to, I guess, give artists an outlet online to perform and try to, get them some kind of financial assistance and income when it was still very uncertain back then. And In my experience, it just doesn't work unless you're doing something that is really thought through. It's plotted out. It's something quite specific. And I mean, Bailey, you mentioned before Jimmy Eat World. Like, I know I'm a fan of Jimmy Eat World, and they did 3 albums, and they specifically curated these live streams and these live shows to be something very specific, and they dressed the sets up really nice. It was multiple camera angles. It cost them a mozza, I would imagine. Like something like that, yeah, that works. But watching Johnny Blogg sit in the corner playing K-San and Wonderwall, it's just
I think
really kind of
the problem is
translate.
always going to be you can have the vibe at the end where the guys are playing at that end of the thing, where everyone's playing. You can put the lights up, you can have you have the sound, but if there's no feeling at the other end where the guys are watching, it's not the same.
That's exactly how I feel, Dave. Like,
Yeah.
you haven't got that audience, you haven't got that human connection.
Yeah. Unless it's on a big screen but you can't be together anyway. So
you can't interact with the audience as well. You can't hear them singing back your songs. It's like the comedians have done live shows. I don't know if you're familiar with Andrew Schultz, but he did a very good one on Netflix called Schultz Saves America, and it was very like direct to the camera, like very straightforward. So that was sort of different, where you didn't have time to sort of because
well, it's that special, it's that feeling that if you play live that you get when the band and the audience, you're all exactly on the same level. I can't explain it, but you're all together on the one thing. It's just an incredible feeling that everybody in the room is together.
And I think like if a gig on any level, whether it's a solo acoustic thing or a band thing, like you're not sitting there, or you're not going to the gig by yourself most of the time. You're going with a bunch of mates. You're going with people you want to hang out with. So it's more of an experience as well. So it's like it's an event. So even watching Johnny Bloggs play down at the pub on the corner pub, it's like you've had dinner, you've gone out, you've had a couple of beers already. You're going out, you're going to digest the music as well. There is going to be that kind of physical back and forth on stage as well. And it's an experience, whereas like it's hard to emulate and mimic that experience in an online format on that level, because it's just, you're right, you just don't have that connection with the audience.
At least like with this podcast, we have the interaction. We can see each other, we can talk. It's live. But with the live gigs, it's not.
There's a lot of money being spent over there in Silicon Valley on exactly this online streaming. And there's a lot of companies or organizations or platforms that have fundamentally folded. So there's been a real push since, I guess, about 2012, and many, many millions of dollars. And I think there's probably one big player in the market, and that's a platform called Stageit. And even they just struggle to turn a dollar. And it won't be very, COVID was the perfect environment for them to pick up some bigger name people, and they've got some decent name people, but by the same token, they're still not charging ahead with revenue or profitability or anything like that. So it is a really challenging space. Absolutely.
There's a quote that I like to mention every now and again when we have topics like this. It's, you can't download a live music experience. And I think there's a lot of merit in that, because the live music is an experience. It's something that you experience in real time, and it's kind of hard to put that in an online space and kind of get the same feeling.
It's just like the AFL having no audience, and then they play the crowd cheering. It's like it's fucking bullshit.
It would suck. It would
fucking shit.
Well, fingers crossed that the NRL grand final still goes ahead too.
Of course it will, and then you go into lockdown.
And then we'll go into lockdown.
Got to have the NRL first.
Yeah, there is just going back to the online thing. There is a platform in Australia that, because I saw Mick Thomas promote it from Weddings, Parties, Anything, where you can actually book Mick's new band, whatever they're called now, and it might be Soapbox Wally or something, and they'll play live and stream into your house or your party for whatever the fee is. So I think there's an opportunity there moving forward, but as long as you could have a party, a decent, well-known band would be able to make some money out of that online streaming as long as you've got the party and the people at the house. But I don't necessarily see, as you were saying, the old acoustic from down the pub start strumming in his backyard and actually pick up a bit of a live audience. So it's a challenge.
Definitely. Definitely.
Hey, James, have you got any funny stories about different requests that either the artist or the venue might have?
Great question, Tay.
Because you always hear those stories. I
Well,
want the blue M&Ms. Or
that's it's funny you mentioned that, Tay, because I was going to bring this up. I don't know what artist it is, but they want green M&Ms in their green room.
Yeah,
and the reason for that is because if whoever's setting the green M&Ms up right, if they can get that right, everything else will be perfect.
Wow.
But I mean, sometimes you get it from the venue as well. Like, we don't want anyone to play any of this or something. It's like.
Yeah. There's venues that I work with that will specifically say we don't want to hear anything by the Angels.
Am I ever gonna see your face again?
Oh, no.
Because of that same thing. It's just one of those really kind of, I guess, Aussie kind of things where you just can't not get into that chorus. So,
bloody hell, Dave, your bloody internet shit in Adelaide.
What's happened if I've frozen?
Nah, mate, you've gone off camera.
Oh, no.
Yeah, mate.
I've got you, so that's all right. So
okay.
I got you as well.
Oh, maybe it's the Melbourne internet, Bailey.
Oh, shot myself in the foot there. But back to blue M&Ms.
Yeah. I think so. Like, I haven't really come across any kind of weird requests, but it's just kind of I find that musicians like it does my head in. So that they're getting paid to do a show. And I just think if you're getting paid to do a show and you want, say, blue M&Ms or green M&Ms or whatever, and you want to get stuff for free. And the big one that I come across with most of my clients is booze. So like all these acts come in and you hear like there's a 5-piece band and they want 2 cases of beer, 4 bottles of wine and a bottle of vodka. And you're like, hang on a second, like it's like what are you going to do with all the booze? And it's just this. It just does my head in. It's like, if you want that much booze, why don't you just add an extra $400 onto your fee and then just go buy it? It's kind of like, oh, what can we get for free from the venue? And how can we take advantage? Because, we're musicians and we're getting ripped off on some level and the pub's making squillions of dollars and, we're not getting paid as much as we want to be and we should get stuff for free. And it's just, But I mean, when I was at the Manning we had these straight edge bands come through. So if you're not familiar with straight edge is
no sex, no drugs, no alcohol.
Pretty much, yeah. And but these crazy cats, they love their energy drinks. So I remember one time we had to go and buy 4 cases of Red Bull for 2 bands, and I'm thinking, holy shit, these guys must be just amped when they're getting on stage.
So I can't play when I play live. I have to play sober.
Yeah, good.
Absolutely. Like I just sober. That's it. Drink after.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's work. I'm not going to go to work and get pissed.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right, and that's actually hitting on a point that's coming through more and more often these days with venues is that they will actually say, okay, we're going to see you as a subcontractor when you're on site, and as a result of you being a subcontractor, you're dealing with power, you're dealing with speakers. We are actually going to say that you are no longer allowed to consume alcohol when you're on site. Yeah, and musicians arc up about it, and I go, well, hang on. Like, if you're a professional musician, like you're saying you are, then you should be totally on board with that, because a Sparky's not going to be able to come in, start tweaking with stuff on stage and, be sucking down on schooners off the side of stage. It's if you're a professional, treat it like a job.
Exactly. And I think a lot of musicians, it takes a while. It took me a while to get to the point where you're like, all right, this is my job. It's a business. I've got to treat it professionally. I'm not going to get wasted. I've done that before. You sound like I sound like shit anyway. It's just, you wouldn't go to any job drunk.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
but that's something that's so commonplace, especially amongst Australian music scene, is that there's a lot of alcoholism and a lot of drinking abuse happening with Australian musicians.
When I come from that era, I come from the 80s.
Yeah,
and I learned that there's a fine line between having a few drinks to be relaxed on stage and then just you go too much and you play like shit. So, and some guys would go over, and some other guys would go, So
like I remember, like my first couple of gigs, I got paid in alcohol. So I would drink, and it's the only time I've ever had a Johnny. It's the only time I've ever had a Johnny Walker Blue. I was like, yeah, Johnny Walker Blue. I'm getting paid for this, but like it wears off.
Yeah.
You wouldn't walk into like McDonald's expect people to be drunk serving you fries.
Absolutely.
I heard a story. I don't know how true it is, but I think it was from Chuggy, and he was the one who would have booked Fleetwood Mac back in the day.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was pretty young, pretty raw at the thing, and this is the first sort of big and overseas band that came, and they flew in, and the first request was they needed all this cocaine, and he'd never got cocaine for anyone before. He'd got dope for the other bands, or the Aussie bands and stuff. So he had to find some guy to get the coke, and he found it. And then the other thing they wanted at this venue was Heineken beer, and Heineken then was an imported beer, so he had to freaking get this beer imported for these guys. And
Where they have a big banquet stuff they go on.
anyway,
He said he walked backstage.
where they all think they were on stage. He walked backstage and he saw all these Heineken bottles, and they were all open but not drunk. Like the tops were off them, but not. Have you heard this story, James?
No, but it's just
the tops are off them and
doesn't
not drunk.
surprise you, does it, James?
Anyway, he went to the side of the stage. He looked on, and Mick Fleetwood's at his drums, and beside him, he's got this table, and all the bottle caps are on the table, all filled with white powder. So you talk about to excess. That's a different time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mate, has anyone seen the Motley Crue documentary?
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, the dirt. Yeah,
The dirt.
That's crazy shit.
That first scene, fucking hell.
Yeah. Jeff Allen shared with me. Jeff was another one that, shout out to Jeff, another friend of the podcast, but he shared with me a time at, is it the Rudy Hill RSL?
Yeah.
James?
Yeah.
And it was at the time of Narara. I think that would have been about 83, just thinking. And Dragon came and played the Rudy Hill RSL on the same day they'd played Narara. And he was just saying they were just, all of them were just off their face. And is it Mark and Todd? And they were sort of leaning against each other. And they had a keyboardist that they had to prop up to play.
Wow.
And so when you hear stories like that, you just sort of think, my God, those were the old days. So
Yeah, back when gigs were plentiful and there was, there seemed to be more gigs than bands, and like all the halcyon bands of the 80s could play, 2 gigs a night going around Sydney.
That's
another
venues
question.
Look for now. Sorry, what do
What's-
venues look for now? Because there has been a shift.
They look for, the first thing I would look at if there's a band that comes to me and say, their agent approaches me, or if I'm looking at a band, the first thing I look at is how many social media followers they got.
Wow.
Like straight up. Yeah.
Does that tell you the hard work they've put in to get those followers? Is that what that's about? Is that why you look at that?
I guess yeah, on some level, especially if you say like you're promoting a gig and you're taking a risk, you want to know that they've got an audience, and you'll be looking on their socials, looking for that engagement, that interaction.
Yeah.
And it's gonna fill you with more confidence to shell out the cash that they're asking for. But like that, honestly, like on that level, sometimes it's not even about whether you think the artist is any good.
Yeah.
And I have booked artists because it makes sense.
But it's not whether you think it's good, is it? It's whether their followers think they're good, because they're the ones that come and spend the money at the pub.
That is true, but there's also a little loophole in that as well, where you don't know if they've got followers, and you don't know if they think they're any good. So there is a little bit of social media bluffing that artists can get away with as well, like with sponsored posts and just basically paying for likes, which is very easy to do if you got the money for it.
James, in the old days, back in the 80s, in Queensland, there used to be, like, for cover bands, there'd be a circuit. Is there something like that still that you? I mean, I know you have a lot of venues, but you have like a rotation thing where guys can go and play here.
On a smaller level, so like your solos and duos, yeah, definitely. Like an act could play the same venue once or twice a month easily. As you start to go up, it becomes the performance opportunities become more and more, I guess, scarce. So it's harder for, say, a party band or even a tribute band to play weekly, unless you're willing to travel. So in and around Greater Sydney, it's nigh impossible for any band to play weekly. And if you are, you've obviously got a product that people want to see, and venues are having to pay for it, or you're not charging enough money, and venues are taking advantage of it.
So when you talk about followers, what minimum are you looking at?
Depends on this kind of show and the capacity that you have. If you got, say, like I remember I booked a festival about 4 years ago, and we landed on Birds of Tokyo, Pete Murray, British India,
nice,
Thirsty Merc, and band from Melbourne. I don't know, I can't remember. And followers there, like we knew that the main headlines, Birds and Pete Murray, had followers, but there was an outdoor festival, so we were looking at like 10,000 people, and we didn't reach 10,000. I think we reached 5. But followers then weren't so much a thing for the acts that we knew, but more so for the ones that were kind of like British India, Thirsty Merc. Like, how are they going to actually translate to bringing people in? So it is something you look at. But it just depends on the size of the room, or how many people you're trying to get in, like where your break even point is as well. Because if your break even point's somewhere between 70 and 80%, and you've got 1,000 capacity venue, it's going to direct which way your decision making process goes. Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent. What's the way forward for the industry, James? If you had a magic wand, what would you be doing?
Fuck off, COVID.
Fuck off, Gladys.
What about shut it down, Berejiklian?
Butter chicken.
Well, my family's got a holiday booked for Queensland, and it's happening in first week in November, and I don't think we'll be able to come in. So open up, Anastasia, let us in.
Fuck, mate. She's going to get a shock when she gets more than 10 cases.
And the way it is up here, James, there would be all these people lining the border to keep you pushing you back. So
I can imagine.
It's amazing, the story up here. But outside of COVID, moving forward,
COVID doesn't exist. Let's pretend.
So what are some tips for bands to get seen, to get heard, to get booked?
Okay, so what you want to do if you're a band on any level, or you're an artist on any level, you want to make whoever you are approaching, so whether it's an agent, a venue, even another band, you want to make their job so ridiculously easy that they don't have to think about anything. So what you want to do is you want to make it nice and simple. You want to have a one-page doco. You want to have all the relevant stats for whatever you're doing on that. Your social media follows, you're going to have that. You're going to have hard embedded links to Spotify, YouTube, or wherever your music's out there. You want to have all that on there. You're going to keep your bio really brief, really short. You're going to have an image on there as well.
Good point. I fucking hate when a bio is too fucking long. I just feel like, why the fuck are you talking so much about yourself? That's how I feel.
Bullet points. I don't give a fuck. I don't care when you
fucking oath. I'm like, when I see a bio that's fucking 5 pages long, I'm like, who are you trying to fucking convince?
Yeah. You want bullet points. You want to keep it simple. You just want to take all the guesswork out. So instead of me sifting through 5 pages of waffle, I want to see one paragraph of like, this is where you've come from. This is what you've done. This is what you're going to do. And then you're going to put your bullet points of, any achievements that you've got, that you've had. And then you're going to link everything, and then you're going to that's just the doco. And you want to have good quality promo. You don't want to be sending out anything that's shot on an iPhone or similar. You want to go spend the money up front to have decent promo that looks the goods, because in essence, you're selling yourself. And if you can't even do that to the people who you want to on-sell for you, it's not going to work.
Less is more. Less is more with the bios as well.
Good tips.
Yeah,
and more is more when it comes to
more.
Audio production, videos, and stills.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Spend the money there. and then everything else will kind of start falling into place.
Yeah, great
Yep.
tips. Great tips. James, it's been amazing having you on the Unfiltered Undiscovered. If someone wants to jump into the Launch Squad, where can they contact you?
Facebook, the Launch Squad is probably the best one, but also just the launchsquad.com.au.
I think before we go, James, you should tell us about Run to the Jungle.
Oh,
Run to the Jungle, yes. So Run to the Jungle was a kind of came out of COVID. So it's the band I'm in, Lies in Destruction, and a mate's band called Aces High, and it's basically an amalgamation of Welcome to the Jungle and Run to the Hills. So it's in essence Gunner's tribute playing for a full set, like a 90-minute set, and then Aces High playing for a 90-minute set, and all that got cancelled. Thank you, COVID.
Bugger.
However, we are bringing it back in March and April next year. So we are planning on heading back to Melbourne and Adelaide. We're doing a couple of regional stuff in New South Wales as well. And I'm trying to organise something for up Brizzy Way for around that time as well.
So Gunners and Iron Maiden. That's what it is,
Iron Maiden, yeah.
That's going to have two singers with no balls.
Yeah, well, interesting. The Aces High band actually is female fronted. So you're spot on with that.
That's I apologize. I didn't mean to. That's
no,
cool,
no. It's quite funny. Like her name's Son, and Son's an absolute champion. So she would find the humour in that as well.
Okay,
excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks, James. It's
been a fucking pleasure, man.
Pleasure.
Yeah,
really
good.
good.
You're welcome, guys.
Yeah. So just to close off for the episode, don't forget everyone to check us out. We do have a website, unlike so many bands out there. It's unfilteredundiscovered.com. We've got future episodes coming up. Next week, we've got the punter and the drummer. We've got Big Stu.
Big Stewie!
Big Stu joining us. So that's going to be, I think he's looking forward to it. I hope he's looking forward to it. You can chase us up on YouTube. We've also got a Facebook page. Don't forget our Spotify playlist for all the undiscovered artists that we're encountering. Just look up Unfiltered and Undiscovered on Spotify. We've got some crackers. Once again, a big shout out to the Ritzy kids. Well done, boys.
Awesome,
Shout out
mate.
to Trumpy and Ed for joining us.
Ed, mate, where have you been hiding, man?
And with that, I will bid farewell.
Thanks, James.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.